How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Jason here with That Sports Guy Jason. Welcome to the very first episode of the show, of the channel. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate that. As I mentioned in the trailer, we will be talking about sports. Specifically on this episode, we're going to be talking about Money in the Bank. WWE just happened this past Saturday, July 2nd. It was a great show. A lot of good things happened. Some not so great things. But we're going to talk about it. So we're going to do a nice big recap of the show and also give my thoughts and opinions about what might be next for some of the superstars and some of the storylines. Let's get into it. All right, guys, as you guys know, the very first match of the night was the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. So my first thought when this came on, I thought it was kind of predictable a little bit because it seems like the women's Money in the Bank match is always the first one of the show or one of the first few. So I think it would be really cool at some point to see that pushed up the card, maybe even be the main event of the show at some point. But the placement of this match on the card would kind of show its later on, which we'll talk about that, of course. But went into this and the competitors of the match, as you guys may know, was Liv Morgan, Asuka, Raquel Rodriguez, Shotzi. Who else is in there? I completely forgot, which is not good. Alexa Bliss. They were also in the match as well. Lacey Evans. So that kind of rounded out the field there. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks like this, but whenever you go into a certain match, you almost kind of start thinking of, okay, who's probably going to win this? Who I think is going to win? Who do I want to win? Who I don't want to win? Who has no chance of winning this? Immediately, my thought was, okay, who's really going to be winning this? Obviously, as a fan of Asuka, I was hoping she might win. I would love to see her win, or even Raquel Rodriguez. Those are definitely my favorite two people in the match. But I also knew, based on storyline and based on who needed the Money in the Bank match or the briefcase, I'm thinking, okay, there's probably no way that Asuka or Raquel Rodriguez are going to win this. So I'm like, okay, so take that out of it. Who's going to win this? And my immediate thought was not because she needs Money in the Bank, but because I figured WWE can't help themselves, that they would have done anything they can to get more attention to Becky Lynch. So I thought for sure she was going to win Money in the Bank. So, but we'll come back to that. So anyway, the match starts, and as to be expected with a wild and crazy match like it's designed to be, this was actually a really good match. And lots of great action, whether it be in the ring, on the outside, with the ladders and whatnot. I thought it was really good. I feel like everybody seemingly looked pretty good and were kept pretty strong. I don't think anybody really looked overly weak in this match. And I think that was really important. If you had to say somebody who was maybe overshadowed in the match and didn't really do anything that stood out, probably Alexa Bliss. Again, just my opinion there, which is really kind of interesting because she's been actually, if I'm not mistaken, has been the one who's won the most championships of everybody in the match. I believe she's a 5-time champion. I don't think Becky's gotten the 5 yet, or Asuka either, for that matter, obviously. So you would think that she might put on a better performance. And I know she's been out, and people might say that her character has been somewhat undefined so far, which is probably a little bit true. But yeah, I had to say she's probably one that didn't really stand out much. Didn't really have a whole lot of moments that stood out, in my opinion. There was one where she did like a Molly go around off the top rope and landed on some people with Raquel Rodriguez kind of in the corner with the ladder pushed up against her. But overall, yeah, she didn't really do a whole lot here. Even Shotzi had a couple of big spots. Of course, the one that stood out was her hitting her head on the back of the ladder when she tried to jump off the top rope and land on Becky Lynch, who was on the ladder. But Becky moved. Shotzi overshot the ladder a little bit and boom, back of the head. And apparently she was bleeding. You didn't really see a whole lot of blood on the back of her head or anything, but you definitely see remnants of whatever happened, like on the front of her head. I couldn't really tell if it was like her makeup smearing or spreading, but apparently I found out after the fact that she busted her head wide open. So yeah. So there was that there. All in all, I kind of feel like a few things that happened here. First of all, we'll talk about who won the match, as you guys probably maybe already know. But who won the match was Liv Morgan. Yes, Liv Morgan won the match. And from a crowd perspective, when it comes to people, she's definitely a fan favorite, no doubt. I think people have been kind of wondering what are they going to do with Liv Morgan, because after the whole title feud, we'll say, with Becky Lynch, that didn't really obviously do anything for Liv. And a lot of people were thinking, including me, were thinking, okay, she's had her title shot. Now it's time for WWE to put her into the oblivion. Not that we wanted that, but we've seen how that happens with people who get title shots or title feuds, don't win the belt, and then all of a sudden fade away. Matter of fact, that's how Lacey Evans was going to be after she had her feud with Becky Lynch. She just happened to have gotten pregnant and she didn't have to fade into oblivion. She just went away to have a baby. Speaking of which, now she's back. And of course, she came back to that great story, that personal story that everybody seemed to get behind her about. And it was very telling about Lacey Evans, because maybe some people didn't know. But I think one good sign that happened, that maybe that push was a little too much and people felt like she was getting pushed down our throats, is that pretty much any time that she got close to getting that belt, people were booing. Not to mention her entrance, there wasn't really a whole lot of, I don't want to say there was crickets, but there wasn't a whole lot of fan reaction to her. So it seemed like that love people had for her, that they want to like her, went away real quick because maybe, again, people felt that she was getting forced onto them. And then maybe her going back and forth from SmackDown to Raw back to SmackDown didn't help either. Like, make up your mind, what are you going to do with her? So now they have a Lacey Evans problem, I think. So they're probably going to keep pushing her as a baby face, and I get it. But I think at some point they may have to start thinking about, okay, maybe we should put her back into a heel with the same gimmick she has now, but still as a heel. Not going back to the whole, 50s pinup girl, whatever you want, whatever you want to call it. But keep that same motif with the armory fatigues and the weird top that she wears with that. Keep that, but turn her to a heel. So Liv Morgan again won this. So obviously at that point you automatically start thinking, okay, what's going to be an appropriate time for her to cash in? How's she going to cash in? When's she going to cash in? Who's she going to cash it on? Is she going to cash in on the current champ on Raw, Bianca Belair? Is she going to stay on SmackDown or move to SmackDown and cash in on Ronda? But anyway, that she won the match. So as far as that's again with Liv, what time will tell with that, which we'll talk about before this is over. But where I think people go next from here. At the end of the match, you can see Becky all distraught. The downfall of Becky Lynch, the disappointment. She can't do anything right. I don't know. We'll see with that, because I don't think they're going to put her back into a title shot. I think that's kind of going a different direction, which we'll talk about that as well. So we'll see what happens with that. I think, what interesting thing with that, Becky seemed to have gotten a lot of fanfare. People seem to still like Becky, even though she's a heel, which is really interesting. So I feel like the WWE can go either way with that. Probably still keep her heel, but we'll see. But there's a different angle I'm going to talk about with that later on. But so maybe not. Most likely, it's very likely that a lot of these people who are in this match are probably going to be facing off against each other in their next immediate storylines of people. I can see them doing a continuation with Becky Lynch and Asuka, especially after that move that Lynch did on Asuka when they had the ladder kind of going across the ring apron and the announce desk. Asuka's laying on the ladder. Becky climbed up on a tall ladder, jumped off, kind of Jeff Hardy-esque in a way. Kind of sort of almost missed her, maybe by design. But so I can see them going to maybe another match with them, maybe not a full feud, like 3 more matches or anything. But I can see them doing the match for SummerSlam just to do a continuation of that. Because it seemed like they had the best chemistry in a way during that match, those two. Raquel Rodriguez, again, she didn't win the Money in the Bank, so where could they go with that? Probably not in a title feud necessarily, at least not immediately. If I had to say anything, probably going to be in a storyline somehow with Shotzi Blackheart. Again, 2 SmackDown superstars, so that would make sense there. When it comes to Alexa Bliss, with her, it's really who knows. Who knows? Because they haven't really pushed her at all. Again, with her being a 5-time champion, they may try to get her back in the mix somehow. But again, I think there's a direction they're looking to go with there, which we'll talk about going forward. But of course, we'll have to see what happens with Liv and go from there. So as far as overall, I'd say I would give that match a solid A-. Again, I think it was pretty hard-hitting action. A lot of action from the women that you wouldn't necessarily automatically expect. But it's a good sign to see that women are doing these things and continue to do these things to show you that they're not as being as much held back as they used to be. I know people are going to have opinions about that, but is what it is. But again, I give it an A-. I thought it was pretty good. Leading on to the next match, it was actually the United States title match between Austin Theory and Bobby Lashley. Now, for me personally, I went into the match solidly thinking that Bobby Lashley was going to win the title, based off the storyline, based on how they were kind of pushing it to, you know, particularly with how Bobby Lashley came off the previous storyline with the Omos. I kind of figured this was perfectly leading into him winning the title from Austin Theory. Not particularly because I feel like also for Austin Theory it'd be good for him to have a loss, lose a title, and potentially gain it back from somebody, even if it's not Bobby Lashley. I can definitely see that. But Bobby Lashley loses it to somebody down the road, and here comes creeping back in Austin Theory to help build up his title resume, since he's getting that Vince McMahon push, if you know what I mean, right? So, so the match itself, I kind of felt was a little underwhelming. Maybe because I fully expected Bobby Lashley to win, so it made it a little less, interesting because of that. I will go ahead and jump in and say that yes, I was correct, as I'm sure many of you were as well, that Bobby Lashley did come out of this as winning the championship. Now, after the match happened, and I see Bobby kind of celebrating the title win, I also went into thinking, in addition to who's his next opponent, but also went into thinking, does he really need the title? But also with that same thought, also kind of thinking, okay, with that in mind, with him not really needing the title, who's his next opponent going to be? Because with him not really needing the title, I almost kind of felt like, okay, they're taking it off Theory for a reason, which again, we'll get into that too. So my kind of opinion about who his next opponent may be, I kind of wonder if they're going to go back to Omos. And I'll mention that later on why, because I almost kind of feel like with somehow the way Money in the Bank ended, are they going to try to put a title belt on Omos of some kind? Not obviously the world title yet, because that's held by Roman Reigns, and there's only certain people are going to get a shot at that at this point. Talk about that too. So maybe it'll be Omos on Raw. Maybe it'll be somebody coming over from the SmackDown side of things, since we obviously know that the walls between Raw and SmackDown are kind of breaking a little bit. They're not fully down yet, but they're kind of getting that way. So maybe somebody from SmackDown. Could it be somebody who's in the Money in the Bank ladder match, which we'll come back to that. But if it had to be somebody from Raw, probably the one person that sort of makes sense at this point, again, it's probably somebody coming out of the Money in the Bank ladder match. But I'd say Seth Rollins. If I had to pick somebody from Raw for sure to face Bobby for the United States title, it would be definitely Seth Rollins. And maybe even moving on into Riddle potentially as well. But that was that match there. Again, I had to say it was kind of underwhelming. So B- at best, C+, something like that there. But yeah, so next match was another title match. It was the Raw Women's Championship. Bianca Belair defending against Carmella. Now, just like I said with this last match, I think we all pretty much knew what was going on or going to happen in this match when it comes to Bianca retaining, and that's what happened. Because of, and I hate to say this, Carmella obviously is a SmackDown Women's Champion and her former SmackDown Women's Champion in her own right, so she definitely earned that, which is why she's in this match to begin with. But I had to say this, no disrespect to her, but it is what it is. She basically filler. She was filling the situation. So because Rhea Ripley was the one who was supposed to have this title match, and I think we all know WWE is trying to go back to that if they can. We don't really know fully what's going on with Rhea Ripley. They haven't really announced anything. I know some reports, I'm not sure if the rumors are not, about her having a brain issue, which if that's the case, they're going to keep Rhea Ripley out for a long time because they're not messing around with that. We see what happened with Daniel Bryan and Edge and Christian. All these people had neck and head issues, Samoa Joe. So, especially with somebody who's so young and somebody they want to keep around and push to the moon just as much as they're doing with Bianca Belair, they're going to want to keep that and protect her as much as possible. So, if that's really true, we might not see Rhea Ripley for a while, potentially. We'll see what happens, on Monday. Maybe she may make a comeback. We'll see. But with that being said, also kind of made this match underwhelming in a way. Kind of thought it was better than the Bobby Lashley, Austin Theory match, though. So again, mentioning Bianca won. So I'll give this match B- for sure. I don't think I want to go any higher than that. Regarding what's next for people, I think the way the match after the match ended was with Carmella attacking Bianca after the match is over, And I say attacking, it wasn't like she just beat the crap out of her or nothing like that. But again, a mild attack that kind of left her on the ground for a little bit. I think we can see that going into SummerSlam, or at least Raw, whatever it may be, there's going to be a continuation of this. Now, with that being said, that leads into what I was saying before about Rhea Ripley. That I'm sure for the big summer party that is SummerSlam, they would love to have Bianca versus Rhea for the Raw Women's Championship. But if they're already going into Carmella, that'll at least tell me that at least coming out of last night, Rhea Ripley, as of that day, and probably maybe even today when Raw airs, they already know Rhea Ripley's not going to be ready for SummerSlam, or at least not ready enough for them to start pushing it right now. So that could be a sign about what's going on with Rhea Ripley. But I think for these two, what's next for them is each other. I don't know about SummerSlam. They may want to do something bigger for SummerSlam. Who knows? But again, maybe lack of options. Maybe that's what it comes down to. So we'll see from there. But again, give that match a B plus or B minus. Excuse me. So the next match, I think I'll go ahead and say this because it was a very popular opinion, was another title match. And I'd say the popular opinion was that this was definitely the match of the night. The WWE Unified Undisputed Tag Team Championship match between the Street Profits, the Challengers, and the champions, the Usos. Both tag teams we both know are really good. Both tag teams can definitely bring it, and they definitely brought it. I go back to a little bit to just want to mention the Usos match with the New Day way back in the day where they were inside the cage or the cell, perhaps there. I thought that was definitely one of the Usos' best matches I'd ever seen for a tag team title match. I might be willing to put that up on par with this match, the match here tonight. It was a good match. There was no cell involved. There was no cell involved, excuse me. But still, it was a great match. A lot of back and forth, a lot of false finishes, which I know people may not always be a fan of. But I feel like these false finishes for this match were appropriate, we'll say. Whether it be each team hitting their finishers on each other or, getting something strong and, not finishing the match. So, yeah, a lot of back and forth, a lot of hard hitting matches, whether it be with fists, kicks, knees, whatever it may be, just hard hitting. And some of that was a little bit of surprise because I don't recall I've ever really seen the Street Profits fight like that, at least not to that intensity. But I actually liked it. From somebody who actually likes the Street Profits, I actually enjoyed seeing that aggression from them. And I never really noticed it in the last few weeks until somebody, Pat McAfee, pointed it out by how much muscle Montez Ford has put on recently. And when he said that, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. But he hasn't lost any of his athleticism. He's still getting really high on the frog splash. He's still doing a lot of rolls, jumping up in the air, kicking people in the head, things like that. So he's still doing that. He even had a move where he started in one corner inside the ring, ran to the other, jumped over the not just the ring post, but also the one on the outside, the LED post, and landed on both of the Usos, and then landed on his feet. So yeah, he still has that athleticism, but he has more muscle now. That's going to lead into what I'm going to mention when it comes to what was next. But as far as the match itself, the match ended with the Usos retaining their championships. A little bit of controversial fashion because as the replay showed, you maybe notice it a little bit on camera, but as the replay showed, when I don't remember who got the pin, it might have been Jimmy, but whoever, once one of the Usos pinned Montez Ford, as he kind of turned and rolled him, he rolled Montez Ford's right shoulder up off the mat. But the referee was in a position on the other side where he couldn't see that. So he still counted the 1, 2, 3. And of course, in the arena, they showed the replay as well as people on TV that happened. And all of a sudden, you hear the crowd kind of moaning and groaning about that happening. And then you also see the Street Profits kind of pointing out, hey, why did the match end? You see my shoulder was up. And they're also all distraught as they're leaving the ring, leaving the arena, things like that as well. So no question that match for me gets an A plus. And I don't think really anybody else would give anything less than an A, to be honest with you. If you did, I'd love to hear your opinion. If you thought it was less than an A, then or less than an A minus, whatever. If you thought it was less than the A range, leave a message in the comments or what have you, because I'd love to hear your opinion on why you thought that. I'll definitely respond to that comment if you do. Um, but but yeah, definitely that. But as far as what I think is next for the Usos with the tag team division the way it is, who knows? But again, also with the way I just ended, that you almost have to imagine that the Street Profits are going to get a rematch, probably for SummerSlam, which I think is only 3 weeks away. So, so which is good because not only do they continue that storyline, but maybe we might get another hard hitting match between these two. But I think the big thing people were talking about that previously, like on the last SmackDown that happened this past Friday, it was mentioned by Kayla Braxton that there was supposedly some dissension or, some bad feelings between Montez Ford and D'Angelo Dawkins, which of course they denied, and I don't know where the stems from. But that comment that Pat McAfee made about him putting on muscle made me think, huh, that's the kind of guy that Vince McMahon likes and was willing to push. Not to mention, he's great on the mic. He's got that energy. He's athletic in the ring. People seem to like him. That's a guy that can push. And to me, that's signifying that, yes, there's probably going to be a rematch between the Usos and the Street Profits. But I think at some point, whether it be during that match, afterwards, or whatever, they're probably going to try to break up the Street Profits, which I get it, but it's kind of bad in the way because that means they're dismantling another tag team, and there's already not enough tag teams in the WWE right now, men's or women's, and you're already breaking up one of the best ones you got. So from that regard, kind of not good to see it. But I also kind of hope though that they do break it up, that they don't give Angelo Dawkins the Tucker treatment. Tucker, as in formerly of the Heavy Machinery, who was tag team partner was Otis, broke them up, pushed Otis a little bit, and Tucker was gone. Had 2 matches and he was done. Hopefully they do not do that to Angelo Dawkins. I think there's a lot more there, or Angelo Dawkins, there's a lot more there than for him than it was Tucker. So I probably won't do that, but that is what it is. That's what I think is next for those guys. But again, A+ match. Hopefully, when they do it again at SummerSlam or whenever it is for the titles, it'll be just that good. So there's that there. The next match was the women's SmackDown match for the title. Rousey defending against Natalya. This match, I wasn't too sure what was going to happen because, yeah, they're still kind of pushing Ronda. Natalya's been a former champion. She still has her heart, thing behind her. So could they put the belt on her? And considering there was so much heat with them on social media, especially, maybe not so much, in the ring or whatnot, maybe they might consider, putting the belt on Natalya. So I was kind of interested for this match. Also kind of felt it was lackluster, not really because of Natty per se or really Ronda. I don't know. Just because again, we all know how good Natty is, but let's be honest here. Before this, they haven't really pushed her too well as a singles wrestler. It's always been in a tag team, either with Shayna Baszler or somebody else. So I kind of think that's maybe going away. Going into the match, I can see a scenario to where, they may continue this going on after this match, like into the next week, but maybe introducing Shayna Baszler into the mix with Ronda, since they are real life friends. They had that whole video on social media about Ronda saying that, hey, you should back me up because I'm your friend, blah, blah, blah. Shayna saying, no, I got to stay out of this because she's my partner, or, Natalya's her partner and whatnot. So didn't really know what was going to happen with her. So that was kind of that intrigue to see what was going to happen. The match didn't really do anything for me. Not that it was horrible or whatnot, but it just didn't really do anything for me. As far as just the match itself, I won't be too bad with it because, again, it wasn't bad. So I give it a B-, C+ area. But it also kind of came up a little predictability too, because during the match, it was a point where Ronda was going from outside the ring to inside the ring to the outside, and somehow messed up her knee on the rope or whatever. And then for me, that triggered like, oh, there it is, because I never thought about it until I heard somebody point it out that when it comes to the women's Money in the Bank, other than Carmella, who holds a record for holding the Money in the Bank the longest, other than her, the women's Money in the Bank winner, they don't really keep the briefcase very long, whether it be that night the cash in like Alexa Bliss or I can't think of who else did it that same night. They don't seem to keep the briefcase very long. Nikki Ash did it the next night on Raw. So people don't seem to keep it very long. So when I saw that knee injury, that triggered to me like, oh, Liv Morgan's going to cash in when this match is over. whether it be it basically was also a sign that Ronda was going to win because again that injury, Morgan's going to cash in. Okay, and guess what happened? Ronda won, retained, and Liv Morgan, of course, came out and cashed in. And one of the funniest things for me was you can see Ronda whenever Liv's music hit, she looking at the thing, and the camera got a shot of her saying, "Oh shh," So that was kind of funny. But yeah, Liv came out. She get the briefcase over, officially cashed in. Ding ding ding, it was official. Automatically, the fans when she came out, the fans are definitely hyped and excited for the cash in opportunity. But when it started, Liv tried to do like a kick on Ronda. Ronda kind of countered that, grabbed her leg, and put it in the ankle lock, and you can hear the boo birds coming down because the fans thought automatically that uh, they're killing Liv Morgan again. It's gonna be a quick fail. They're gonna bury her some more. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, are they gonna do that? And I'm glad they didn't because had they done that, that would have made the Money in the Bank so meaningless at that point. Now you would have just killed it within 2 hours, and now I have to go an entire year with no missed Money in the Bank. And you would have buried Liv Morgan and probably overpushed Ronda. It would have been a great way to make her a heel. People hate her even more. But when they didn't do that, Liv Morgan, again, it was really quick, maybe 2 minutes. She rolled her up at some point, taking advantage of maybe of the bad leg potentially. She is now your new women's SmackDown champion. And I have to say, very surprised at that. Again, Liv winning the Money in the Bank definitely was a surprise. Her cashing in that night, not as much as a surprise, but seeing her with the SmackDown Women's Championship, I'd have to say that was surprising considering who I thought was going to win the match originally. Like I said before, is Becky. Um, but kudos to Liv Morgan. Caps off to her. Definitely all the reaction from the fans and people on Twitter, including her friend Ruby Soho, now in a different company. Definitely all elated for, which I get that. I definitely am very curious to see what's next for her as a women's SmackDown champion. So I almost feel like that this opens up the door for the possibilities of, okay, who could be the next champion? So I feel like with Ronda, it was always kind of earmarked as pretty much going to be her or Charlotte or maybe returning Bayley whenever that decides if she goes back to SmackDown. Obviously, right now, Charlotte's still not coming back from her honeymoon situation or whatever else she has going on. Bayley's not back fully from her injury. So, with that being said, what's next for Liv? I can't speculate next. I have no clue. With Ronda's thing, with Ronda, I feel like she's not really tied to one brand at all, especially now there's not really a full brand split. So I almost kind of feel like with Ronda, it would not shock me if she goes to Raw. And like I was saying with the whole Carmella thing and Rhea Ripley not being ready, if you want that big mega Raw championship match for SummerSlam and you're not feeling Carmella should be it, I can see that rematch happening between Bianca and Carmella happening like on a Raw at some point. But for uh, SummerSlam, the Raw match, I could definitely see Vince wanting it to be Bianca versus Ronda and probably putting the belt on Ronda because, again, like I said before about another situation, Vince and WWE can't help themselves. So, not to mention, you put her on Raw with a title or even without. That's going to give them Ronda versus Becky, which I personally think will be fine. If you did want to keep the Bianca versus Carmella match for SummerSlam as the Raw Championship, you can keep that and still also have another big Raw SummerSlam match with Ronda versus Becky. Now, also that'll take off of what I was thinking with Becky versus Asuka for SummerSlam, but you can give Asuka anybody and it will be a great match for SummerSlam. So I don't think that would really matter. Probably Asuka versus Alexa, maybe if that happens. Who knows? But I can definitely see Ronda going to Raw and throwing her name in that mix there, and that frees up SmackDown for Liv to face off against probably a lot of other people like Shotzi versus Liv, Shotzi versus Aaliyah, Shotzi versus Raquel Rodriguez, whoever it may be. Ultimately, I think it is going to come back down to Charlotte coming back and immediately getting a title match against whoever the champion at that point, which is probably Liv. And again, with WWE not being able to help themselves, Charlotte's going to get an immediate title match probably and probably beat whoever it is, unfortunately. Is what it is. So that's probably what's next for those two. Yeah, as far as the whole situation, with Liv getting the money back, give it an A. A, because it's something different. Maybe something perhaps unexpected by a lot of people. And then WWE did that. So good for them. Kudos to them. All right. So the final match of the other night is the main event, the men's Money in the Bank match. In this match, you have Drew McIntyre, you had Sheamus, you had Sami Zayn, you had Madcap Moss, you had Riddle, excuse me. You had Seth Rollins, and you had Omos. Those are your 7 original guys. Yes, I said original because after all those 7 guys got in the ring and they're ready to start the match, Adam Pearce comes out and says there's an 8th person in the match. Now, I heard some cheers from the crowd, and I was kind of wondering, okay, who they think is in this match? Who's it going to be? And again, I had no clue who he was going to bring out. But then he announced it was Austin Theory, and all of a sudden you heard those cheers go to like subtle, again, moans and groans and boos maybe. So that happened. So Austin Theory was your 8th man coming in this match. And I also kind of felt like that put into the predictability of is why would you put him in this match unless he's going to be the guy to win it? So I'll go ahead and tell you, and I'll go through some other points. But he won the match, and he is Mr. Money in the Bank, taking advantage of that Mr. McMahon push, obviously, and that's what it was. Obviously, not going to say that because Vince is dealing with his whole thing. But that's what it was. So they're pushing Austin Theory to the moon. At least they're trying to. He's Mr. Money in the Bank. We'll come back to that there. But the match itself, one thing that stood out to me was I'm not going to say everybody looked strong in the match. Everybody had their moments, but there may be a couple people that probably didn't look as strong as others. Probably Madcap Moss and Sami Zayn. I'd say the ones who didn't look as strong. I think they did a good job, a great job of making Omos look like a true giant beast. A great job. They buried him in ladders. That not keeping him down. Obviously, all the other 7 guys had to team up on him, and that never really put him down on the ground. He came back a lot, destroyed a lot of people. They did a great job of making him look like a beast. What kind of put him out of the match? And again, don't want to get this away. I thought it was pretty cool that all 6 of the other guys, except for Theory, they were able to pick him up, like kind of like a funeral procession. They picked him up over their shoulders, all 6 of them. It was a cool sight to see, and they kind of javelin through him or razor edge throwed him onto the table. He crashes through the table collapse, breaks, all stuff like that. He's on the ground laying, and automatically he's done. But that's what it took for them to get rid of Omos, was all 6 of them put him up and down through the table, and he was done. So they did a good job of making him look like a beast, and I'll give them full credit for that. Great job with that. Going into the match, I have to say I was pretty sure that they were going to put the briefcase on a Riddle. Again, they're already pushing him to the moon. He has a match with Roman on Smackdown, which didn't make a lot of sense there. So that led itself into thinking, okay, they put him in that last chance match to be in the Money in the Bank match, and he won that. So it's like, okay, he's going to win this match. He's going to get the briefcase. And there was moments where, in the match, like he's about to grab the briefcase, including the last moment, but he never actually got it. He even gave that huge RKO to Seth Rollins at the end, which was a great moment, which I'm sure is going to get replayed many times down the road. But after that, he was able to crawl back up the ladder. But then Austin Theory, who was missing in action for so long at this point, he goes up the other side of the ladder, eventually knocks Riddle off the ladder. And at that point, you hear the boos coming. He reaches up, grabs a briefcase, and he is your 2022 Money in the Bank ladder match winner, Austin Theory. And there we go there. So what's next for Austin Theory? That's probably going to be the most curious thing because obviously Roman Reigns is the current undisputed champion with both the Raw and SmackDown titles, the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship. But of course, he has that big fight match against Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. So you would think that whoever wins that is probably going to be beat up pretty good, which would be the ultimate time for Austin Theory to cash in that Money in the Bank briefcase, right? But that would also mean that you're not going to have that mega match that you're probably looking for in WrestleMania, or at least they're going to take away from it with Roman Reigns versus The Rock, or maybe even Cody. So unless they have plans for Austin Theory to cash in on one of those guys at SummerSlam, him winning the title there, and Roman Reigns getting it back from Austin Theory at some point, that may not be a thing they want to do is having him cash in there. But if he does cash in and takes the, or if he, I should say, if he doesn't cash in there, when's the cashing going to be? Now, obviously, he has till next July, or next Money in the Bank to cash in that briefcase. So it's going to be kind of a weird thing because obviously, Roman's good now. Whenever Cody comes back, they're going to want to start pushing him, which even though he's not coming back till March, most likely. So we'll see it's really interesting how they're going to play this out. If Austin Theory does not cash in at SummerSlam after that likely knockdown, drag out brawl that Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar have, then that's your sign of, okay, does WWE even know what they're going to do, or they're just trying to put it in the hands of Austin just in case they figure it out, and now he's the Money in the Bank guy? Because I'm sure the original plan probably was to have Cody win it, and then that took away from that, and they decided not to give it to Riddle, but give it to Austin Theory. So that's going to be really interesting there, what happens there. As far as the other guys in the match, kind of already mentioned with Omos, they may try to put him in the title match, capitalize on him looking like a beast now, maybe go up against Bobby Lashley, get the title from him potentially. Because really, what else are you going to do with Omos on Raw? Probably might be a good thing to have him go to SmackDown, maybe start facing off against Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, some bigger guys that they have on that roster, or rather on that side of things. Otherwise, I have no clue. I can see Matt Riddle and Seth Rollins getting into a storyline feud together for SummerSlam, especially. Again, these guys are going to start pairing off. Maybe Madcap Moss versus Sami Zayn or something like that. But one thing that came out after Money in the Bank was over was after it was over, Happy Corbin came out from behind where Pat McAfee was at the announce desk, pulled him over the guardrail and started beating the crap out of him. So, and at the end of all that, he really destroyed him, even him with the end of days on the padding on the outside. And while Pat McAfee was down, face down on the mat outside, Happy Corbin said, "Challenge accepted." So basically accepting Pat McAfee's challenge for a match at SummerSlam. So that's going to be that's the first guaranteed match or second guaranteed match for SummerSlam beyond Roman versus Brock Lesnar. So that's happening for sure. So you have those two matches set for sure. Yeah, but folks, that's basically the rundown of Money in the Bank, my recap, and kind of some of my thoughts and opinions about what might be next for some of the superstars and the storylines. That's where we're going from there. Thanks for checking me out. Thanks for listening. We appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, talk about anything you want. Again, this is a sports dedicated channel focusing on baseball, football, basketball, MMA, pro wrestling. I'm not afraid to talk about anything else. But put in the comments what else you might want to hear me talk about, and I'll see you next time.